Detachment isn't an action, it's a result. Failing to understand this kept me stuck, trying to shift my thoughts and my mood in ways that just couldn't work. I kept trying to detach from my thoughts by pushing away from them, but I would just wind up in loops like, stop, don't think that. That thought isn't me. I don't want to believe that. And I realized that I can't push away from my negativity because I just end up focusing on the very thoughts that I'm trying to avoid. Once I started to understand that detaching from a thought isn't about trying not to think it, then I could start to look for steps that actually worked. And I realized there's a very simple process that I can use to break free from my thoughts pretty much any time that I choose. I'm Kyle Greenfield with thejoywithin.org. I've been a stress and well-being coach for nearly a decade now, and in that time, I have seen this single key work wonders both for myself and for so many of my clients. It's about creating space. Once I realized that I couldn't break free from my thoughts by telling myself not to think them, I started to look for a new approach. And I began to look for tiny little gaps between my thoughts, gaps in the story that is running through my mind. I realized that no matter what I was going through, whether I was mad at my partner or upset about something at work or depressed feeling like the world was crumbling, whatever the story was, eventually my mind would run its course. Eventually there would be a gap. And I realized that this break in the negative story is the first step of detachment. And if it's going to happen eventually anyway, why can't I make it happen now? What can I do to accelerate it, to bring it forward so that I feel that space now rather than whenever my mind decides that it's done? And so this led me down a path of learning how to interrupt my negative thoughts, not trying to shift them, not trying to stop thinking them, just trying to find the tiniest little bit of space. So now, as soon as I notice when I'm in a bad mood, as soon as I notice that there is a negative story running through my mind, I want to do whatever it takes to interrupt that thought, even if it's only for a split second. Because I know that if I can find that gap, a few things will start to happen. Firstly, I begin to realize that that negative story that's active right now isn't permanent. I find this is really important, especially when it comes to all-consuming emotions like depression. If it feels insurmountable, then knowing that is only temporary really, really helps. Secondly, finding that gap teaches me that if I can create that space once, I can do it again. Shifting my mood can be as simple as just stacking these little spaces together. But when I'm in the heat of the moment, when that negative emotion really has a hold of me, it doesn't feel like that. So if I can just find that one little space, it starts to convince me that, you know what, there is a break here, there is a gap that I can find. And even if I find it and I fall right back into that same negative story, I'm still in a bad mood. I know, you know what? I can find that space again. And I can do that as many times as I need to until the negative story starts to feel less intense. Finding that brief space also begins to distance me from the negative story. All of a sudden, I start to realize, you know what? Here's that negative thought, and here I am, over here. Even if in the moment I still feel like I'm in a bad mood, that space begins to happen under the surface at a subconscious level. Lastly, and I think most importantly, finding that space gives me a foothold from which I can then take the next step. It is so easy when I am stressed or frustrated or depressed or whatever it is to start to feel like I am stuck in that state. And when I'm in those negative states, if I try to think, you know what, I should just be happy, I need to be happy now, then that's too big of a leap. It makes me feel worse. So the space gives me a small step that I can take anytime, no matter what that story is, because it doesn't insist that I change my mood right now. It's just a first step. And by the way, I know that I am going to forget to do this sometimes. I know that I'm going to have plenty of moods where I am just consumed by my negative thought. And that's okay. I just need to give myself grace and compassion for that. Know that that's going to happen and not get too frustrated or disheartened if I do feel stuck in a bad mood. I just need to notice the thought and interrupt it. I think of this as stepping back and resetting, and there are so many different techniques that I could use. I can focus on my breath, I can put on music, I can get up from my desk, I can change my posture, I can go outside, I can read for a minute, I can do a little dance, I can do some jumping jacks or push-ups. What I do will change depending on where I am and what I'm going through in that moment. but the fundamental strategy is the same. I look for the gap, a single moment of relief. It doesn't solve all my problems, but it helps me to get the ball rolling. It gives me the ability to take the next step. And that's what leads me into clarity and deeper detachment. If this resonates, I'm going to link to another video about a process I call the path of alignment. In it, I outline exactly how finding this gap in my thoughts allows me to detach more fully and shift from negativity back into feelings of joy, peace, and well-being. So remember, detachment is a result. It is an effect, not an action. It's what happens when I take that step of stepping back and resetting, finding a moment of space from my thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Head over to thejoywithin.org for more free trainings, guided exercises, and meditations to help you reduce stress and negativity and become the calm, confident, and happy person that you deserve to be. So thank you so much for your time and your energy here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone you love. I believe that we all have the ability to be happy, and it's simple practices like these that help us to get to that state. It begins with a little break, and it begins one thought at a time.